Welcome into the Diamond Vols Podcast on GoVols247.com. I'm Ben McKee, and I'm joined by Will Heflin, former Tennessee baseball pitcher, on this Thursday, March 5th edition of the podcast. I hope you and yours are doing well. I am doing well. Mr. Heflin, I hope you are also doing well, my friend.
I am doing well. It's a beautiful day, Ben.
It is a beautiful day. A little too windy for my liking, but I'm not going to complain because it's not cold. As long as it's not cold, I'll live with it.
Yeah. Sun and warm. Anything else we can deal with.
That's right. And it's been a nice 2 days at the ballpark. The last 2 days, Tennessee takes care of business on Tuesday, beats East Tennessee State 7-1, and then back in action on Wednesday for a second consecutive day on Wednesday to beat Oakland 11-2. Snip, snap, taking care of business the way they should. Then they'll get ready to host Wright State this weekend. Of course, we will preview and discuss what we want to see this weekend from the Vols against Wright State. But before we do that, we are going to recap Tennessee's win over ETSU and Oakland. We'll start with the ETSU game. I guess the biggest takeaway would be Brady Frederick and his ability to come in and save the day for Blaine Brown, save the day for the Vols, and really take it to his previous team.
Yeah, anytime you get a start like that on a Tuesday where there's walks and stuff, you can see some scores get away from you really quickly, like we saw around the SEC. And Blaine Brown just clearly did not have it. But Brady, regardless of jersey he's wearing or dugout he's in, he really likes the Tennessee ETSU matchup in Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Same spot he absolutely shoved in last year. He just flipped roles, and he saved them. I know it was the first inning, but that's a save, right? And so Tennessee offense was able to respond rather quickly, and then from there, just kind of a smooth sailing, good, solid win.
Did you see anything from Blaine that led to his lack of command in that open?
It's hard from behind, like the camera view that you have to get too technical, but the misses at first were just misses. They looked aggressive, and then after like the first two, looked like he was really guiding it and just like praying for a strike, you know what I mean? So just didn't quite have it. But I didn't see anything super technical.
Yeah, I mean, just did not have the command. It's as simple as that. 2 strikes in 12 pitches that he threw, and in hindsight, it comes out Wednesday around lunch that he is in a legal dispute with the NIL collective at Rice over the money he received at Rice during his freshman season last year. Hard not to maybe think that maybe played a role, because Tennessee was aware of that coming out throughout the day on Tuesday. We're aware that it was going to come out on Wednesday. So who knows? I'm not trying to make excuses or anything, but I know if that were me and I knew that was going to be public, even if I didn't do anything wrong necessarily, that would maybe hamper my concentration and focus. So who knows? Maybe that played a role. Hard not to connect those dots in hindsight, at least. Maybe it's just low-hanging fruit, but I also don't know that it was a complete coincidence either. And then we're not really going to dive into the whole legal dispute. I mean, we can have our opinions on whether Rice should be pursuing damages, and that's really the only conversation to be had here, because Blaine Brown didn't do anything wrong, and all you need to know as a Tennessee fan is that it's not going to affect his eligibility at Tennessee, which is the most important part. He's not in trouble. Tennessee's not in trouble. He's going to be clear to play baseball this year, and hopefully from an individual perspective, he's able to figure that out sooner rather than later. So that is something that does not hamper his attention or focus going forward.
Yeah, I don't see how it would. Because it has nothing to do with the NCAA. So that's good. I tweeted out in response to your your post, I was just like, why is this coming up now? That's my only question. And I don't know that you have that answer. But I think it's worth asking. We saw a similar case with the Washington quarterback who decided to leave Washington. They had some clauses in the contract or the NIL deal. I guess it's not a contract. I don't even know what they are. Agreement, we'll call it. Basically gave them a little leverage like, hey, you signed this. You really shouldn't leave. And he didn't. But they did it immediately, right? Like for Rice, it doesn't make sense to me that this is coming out now. Maybe it's been in process for some time and just hit the media this week. I don't know. It just seems kind of dumb to me, but that's the world we live in. So stuff like this is what ultimately will push us towards some sort of clarity on the whole matter, just to look at it more big picture. It's like stuff like this is going to continue to happen until the adults in the room, make some decisions. I mean, like you said, Blaine didn't do anything wrong. No kids decided this is the way this is going to work. Like they're just playing the cards that they were dealt, and NIL is a great thing for them, but this is kind of the downside of it. And it's like, none of them decided that it would be this way, right? Like all the people, who kind of created this monster are now the ones who seem like the most upset when things happen. And it's like, I don't think anybody knew fully what the ripple effects would be of NIL, but I think a lot of people kind of thought it would go about like this, which is a total crapshoot. So that's my only little side tangent rant there. And it's just, it's dumb to me.
Outside of Blaine, the pitching staff was really good the rest of the day Tuesday, with Brady Frederick getting things back on course, and then Cameron Appenzeller comes in and picks up where he left off from over the weekend when he pitched against Arizona State. Appenzeller goes 2 innings, 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts. Brennan Arvidsson, he does give up a hit, but no walks, no runs, 2 strikeouts. Mark Indy, 1 inning of work, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, a strikeout. And then Bo Rudy closed it out in the 8th and the 9th. 27 of his 33 pitches were for strikes, which is always a great ratio. But within those 2 innings, did give up 2 hits. But more importantly, no walks, no runs, 5 strikeouts. So if you take Blaine's numbers out of the equation on Tuesday, 1 walk amongst 5 guys, your 5 top arms out of the bullpen, or 5 of your top arms out of the bullpen, and 15 strikeouts amongst those guys. Did give up 6 hits, but it's all right. You worked around them, worked out of a couple of jams. A strong day for the Tennessee pitching staff after Blaine Brown got out of there.
Yeah, it was kind of the weekend crew Tuesday, which makes sense considering they played 2 in the midweek. Really good to see Arvidsson back out there. 8 out of 10 strikes for him. So that's certainly what you wanted to see. Didn't have his good stuff against UCLA. But like you said, you take out Blaine, so it's 128 pitches and 96 strikes. That is a high strike percentage for a singular person, but even more impressive when you talk about spanning over 5 pitchers. But they all did their job. I mean, literally the first batter of the game scored, which was a hit by pitch that got him to first base. A couple walks moved him over. He scored on a sac fly. And then ETSU did not really threaten anything major the rest of the day. So just a solid, steadying performance from the guys that you would like to see that from. ETSU is a great opponent. We know what they are. But it's a midweek and it's a mid-major, so handle business. And they did. Way easier said than done. Clearly doesn't happen every week, and certainly not for every Power 4 team. But this is one of those cases where you got exactly what you wanted out of it on the pitching side on Tuesday.
And then on the offensive side, you do have to give kudos to the offense for picking up Blaine Brown. And Blaine Brown was part of picking himself up, which was cool to see. And one of the the beautiful things we love about baseball. We always hear, hey, there's always another game tomorrow. That's one of the beautiful things about baseball is you can be totally awful on Friday or you can be totally awful on Saturday. And unlike football, you don't have to wait until next Saturday for a do-over. You don't have to wait until Tuesday night or Wednesday night if you're a basketball team for a chance to go back out there and redeem yourself. I mean, you get to go back out there the next day and try and redeem yourself. In the case for Blaine Brown, he's able to go out there in the bottom half of the inning and redeem himself, and he does so with an RBI double. You had Levi Clark ground into an RBI ground out. Reese Chapman hit an RBI double. Your boy Chris Newstrom hit an RBI single. So 4 of your 7 runs did come in the first inning, but you'll take it considering how the game started. Very nice response from Brown and the rest of the team. And then later on in the game, Manny Marin hits an RBI single. Henry Ford hits a 2-run homer, which was not a cheap shot whatsoever.
No. Reese, really nice day on Tuesday as well. Good to see that from him. I think you may have mentioned that, but doubling down on that. Levi, not a good day. Didn't play on Wednesday. Probably a good reset for him. So we'll see if that turns into a strong weekend for Levi. But overall, only 7 runs, but 11 hits is good to see. A lot of hits from the offense. And, it was one of those days for ETSU. I mean, they threw 8-9 pitchers in 8 innings of offense. So those can be tough when you don't get multiple at-bats off the same guy. You're seeing a new arm every single inning. You're probably getting right, left every time you turn around. So pretty strong, especially with a couple guys that we needed to have good days, have some good days.
And then you look at Wednesday's game, and we'll get into the lineup changes, but we'll run through the pitching real quick because I feel like pitching continued to be the story. The pitching staff continues to clean up their walks, hit by pitches, just command issues, early season jitters in general. Now, I want to see them do it against Wright State. I want to see them do it next weekend in Athens at Georgia to begin SEC play. But starting to gain more and more confidence in this pitching staff as a whole, especially in the bullpen, which, as you all who are loyal listeners know, hand up, I was very concerned about the bullpen going into the season. Knew they had the talent, but just didn't exactly know where the bullpen would be. I wouldn't even say that I doubted the bullpen. It was just a question mark for me, just because you looked at the bullpen and you saw a bunch of talent and you didn't exactly know who were going to be dudes for you. And I still don't really think you 1,000% know until you get into the fires of SEC play. But the last 5-6 games or so have been much better than that Kent State series. So the pitching continued to stand out in a big way to me, Will. I don't know if you felt differently, but on Wednesday against Oakland, Taylor Tracy, boy, did he look good. And I'll say this. I also want to say this before we talk about this Tennessee-Oakland baseball game. Oakland is very bad at baseball. So
horrible.
Everything in that game, on the mound, at the plate, defensively, needs to be taken with a grain of salt, because
you need those games. But yes,
you do. You absolutely need those games. But in terms of making sweeping judgments and takeaways and lineup changes and pitching staff changes and so on and so forth, like nothing dramatic needs to come in that sense based off of that game. Like Taylor Tracy looked like $1 million. He doesn't need to be the Sunday starter all of a sudden because he struck out 7 of the first 9 guys that he faced, right? But with that being said, I wanted to throw that caveat out there, that disclaimer, that let's not overreact too much. But a lot of guys did look good, especially on the mound. Again, no walks. You did have a couple of hit batters. No, you had 1 hit batter. My guy Nick Abraham, he continues to hit the first guy that he faces. It seems every outing. I really love Nick Abraham's stuff, but we got to get the hit by pitches back under control. But Taylor Tracy starts it off, strikes out 7 of the first 9. Abraham comes in, looks really good over 2 innings, gets the win, 3 strikeouts. And then you had a couple of freshman debuts, Jax Bishop and Will Haas. They each gave up solo home runs. Josh Elander said after the game that he could have cared less about the solo home runs because it was their first outing, those jitters that come with that first outing, and they attacked the zone right after those home runs. So he was proud of how they responded. To that, Ethan Biotto comes in and works a clean inning, and then Chandler Day and Sawyer Deering, a tip of the hat to old Tony Vitello, nearly going different pitcher for different batter in the top of the 9th there in a midweek game. But just an overall really good day for the pitching staff once again.
Yeah, when he came out of the dugout after the day out, I was like, okay, Tony, whatever you want to do there, brother. But I do agree with you on the sweeping generalizations, other than Mr. Blake Grimmer. Back in the lineup, goes 3 for 4. He was 3 for 3 until his last at bat, so they should have pulled him before he struck out.
That's a bad coaching move. Coaching move.
He looked good. If the back's bothering him, it didn't show. His first swing of the season went 385, like off of the 385 sign backside to the deepest part of the park. Based on that, I can generally say he looks healthy. But hopefully he feels good today, you know what I mean? And it is good to go for the weekend and continues to get into it. Garrett Wright, first outing, saw some positivity there. Like you said, we'll hold, sweeping judgment till they have some more time against better competition. But, I do want to say the caveat on Oakland is like, they have not given themselves a chance to succeed. I mean, they are in the middle of 4-game series against Georgia, Tennessee for a midweek, and they're at A&M this weekend. Like, their coach hates their team, absolutely hates them. I don't know. That's a tough non-conference schedule, especially a team from north of Detroit. They're like northern suburbs of Detroit. Don't imagine they had the greatest preseason of on-field activity, and then they just get thrown right in the fire. But yeah, they're not very good. So we'll take it with a grain of salt. But it is good to see those freshmen, especially when they're throwing strikes. Haas, that was his debut. We've seen Biotto. Biotto's stuff is really good. Didn't have a good outing strikes wise, but it was close. It looked better than the result was. So good to see him back out there. And then I really like Deering's stuff, who closed it out. And you're right about Tracy. We probably shouldn't sub him in for Landon Mack on Saturday quite yet, but an outing like this can be a launching pad. I know from personal experience, my first outing in 21 was against Arkansas Pine Bluff. Not traditionally a baseball powerhouse like the Razorbacks, but struck out 9 in a row. They were terrible, but it kind of, leapfrogged me into the role that ultimately I assumed for that season. So maybe Tracy does something similar where, this doesn't, earn him a spot on the weekend, but maybe we see an appearance on the weekend and he does well and then he gets another one. Like, these are stepping stone type games.
I totally agree. And that was my thought as well, is that I kind of want to see Tracy on the weekend now. I want to see an inning from Tracy. Now, granted, he's not going to be in the top half of the totem pole of trust, but like on a Sunday, late in the game, maybe you're thinking of another guy to give an opportunity to. Tracy would be towards the top of the chain for me.
Or right in the middle before you go to RV or Frederick.
Yes.
If you need let's say it's the 5th or the 6th, and you're like, can I bridge this to the 7th? He's an option. Yeah,
I agree. And it's just he pounded the strike zone because he did. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he is 92, 93 on the fastball. So it's not like he's overpowering guys. It's just he great presence on the mound. 92, 93, lefty, good changeup
for a lefty.
Yeah, to pair with a nice changeup.
What Appenzeller is.
Fills up the strike zone.
Yeah. That's what Appenzeller is. Appenzeller's got a little more deception, probably a little sharper breaking ball at this point, but Tracy's got a good changeup, throws strikes. He's a pitcher. I mean, I don't know. You can take more away from a pitcher in these type of games than you can from a hitter.
I agree. And I think that there's more velo in the tank for Appy and Tracy. That's something that Josh Elander has talked a bunch about when talking about Cameron Appenzeller, how there's more velo on the way. But both of those guys have real tall, lean frames. Appenzeller's taller than Tracy, but both of those guys, this time next year, I bet you they're around 95 pretty consistently after they've been in the strength and conditioning program for a year or so.
Yeah, that will work. 95 lefties generally fare decently well.
Absolutely. There was also plenty that happened on the offensive side. Heflin mentioned Blake Grimmer's return and Garrett Wright's return, and we'll dive into those a little more in depth here on the other side of this quick timeout on the Diamond Vols Podcast on GoVols247.com. Welcome back into the Diamond Vols Podcast on GoVols247.com. I'm Ben McKee, and I'm joined by the great Will Heflin. The pitching was great throughout the 2 midweek wins. I mean, you take Blaine Brown out of the equation, and Tennessee's staff allowed 1 walk over 17 innings. Last time I checked, if my math is good, that is good. That is a good statistic. 1 walk over 17 innings. And on Wednesday, you did not have a single walk, though you did have 1 hit batter. But Nick Abraham did a good job of erasing that leadoff hit by pitch, responded well to pitch a scoreless inning after that. But hard not to walk away from Wednesday's game, even if it was against 1-10, now 1-11 Oakland. And I said we weren't going to have sweeping takeaways or sweeping judgments, but hard not to think that Blake Grimmer and Garrett Wright are not going to be a nice boost for this offense that is still searching. You can tell that they're still taking some lumps and they're still trying to get better day to day. And in the midst of that, I think Blake Grimmer and Garrett Wright can maybe help speed up that process.
Yeah, listening right there, I was just thinking, have we had an inning where they batted around yet? Yes, they did against Reese hit twice in the Arizona State inning.
Yes.
They scored 4 runs.
Yes.
But he was the only one. He got a hit to lead off the inning, but then made the last out. So they have batted around. But the point is they haven't had an inning where they score more than, I think, 4 or 5 is the most in an inning. So it's like, I know 7 to 10 runs in 1 inning is a lot, but when you're facing teams that you're more talented than, you'd like to see them just kind of break out and unleash some demons. But they did break the double-digit threshold yesterday. So 11 runs, that's a stepping stone. But you're right, they do feel still just kind of in a rut a little bit, but getting better. And maybe they, improve a little bit more this weekend against Wright State, and over the first couple weekends of SEC play, keep getting better. And then it just looks totally different when we get into April and May. That's kind of my theory, is that they'll continue to get better. It seems like here and there's a guy or two kind of seems to be finding his rhythm, and eventually it'll all click, but hasn't quite to this point in totality.
Yeah, as we've kind of touched on the last couple of podcasts, I'm really not trying to make excuses when I bring up these things. I do at this point. I believe they're reasons, not excuses. Maybe my tone on that will eventually change, but in the meantime, I'm going to continue to think that they are reasons. Everybody, of course, asks me, why is the offense struggling? I'm sure you've gotten a bunch of texts like that as well, or you've been out and about and you bump into somebody and they say, man, why is Tennessee baseball not hitting the way we've seen the last couple of years? I think they've got more youth and inexperience than they've had the last couple of years. And I think that is the reason that they are a bit slow out of the gates. Now, I didn't necessarily anticipate Levi Clark and Manny Marin being this slow out of the gate. I think that's played a big role in the offense's slow start in general as well. But also, you talk about Oakland not having a great preseason because of the weather that it has had to deal with. Well, Tennessee didn't have a ton of time on the field either in terms of the preseason. They dealt with a lot of poor weather. And look, I know they have all the fancy machines and pitching mounds and batting cages, and they go over and use the indoor football field as well. It's not the same. It's not the same. It helps you get some work in, but it's not the same as cutting it loose and playing normal baseball. It's a totally different feel. I mean, I obviously did not play at a high level like Will, but even in high school, when we would have to go to the gym for a Tuesday afternoon practice because it was snowing outside or too cold, like, okay, we could still pretend to be in our spots defensively and throw it around and make the right decision to throw to this base and that base and practice our cutoffs and practice our bunt defenses and do some PFPs and all that fun stuff. It's still not the same as being on the field, going through it, live ABs, scrimmages, and a week and a half. I mean, Tennessee had taken away from the preseason, and I do believe that stunted the growth of this team overall. I believe it contributed to some of the command issues out of the gates that we saw the first 2 weeks, and I believe it's contributed, not at all the only reason or the reason that the offense has been slow out of the gates, but I think that's a contributing factor that Tennessee's trying to catch up from. And I mean, we're about at the point to where that doesn't matter anymore. But in terms of being slow out of the gate, I think that's contributed with this group being younger and inexperienced more than we maybe realized or anticipated, that hampering them early on here in February and March.
Yeah, it's like a impossible burger. You know, it looks like a burger. The drill you set up inside may look exactly the same, but it's not the same, is it? And the impossible burger is not the same as a real juicy beef hamburger. So no offense to anybody that loves impossible burgers, but it's not the same. I agree that did hurt them. We're about to the point where you've kind of fleshed that out, but if that carried over into, frustrations and kind of, you talk about good momentum, right? Bad momentum is just as dangerous, where, you are kind of through the slump or the early season slowness, but it beat you down, and now you got other things going on in your mind. You got too many minds that can carry over past where you feel like you should be in rhythm, and you're not, because that slow start kind of lingered around, and now you've got other problems. So it's a fair point, but another couple weeks, I don't think we should or will be talking about that at all. But it certainly contributed to the Kent State weekend. By this weekend, we're kind of getting away from that, but we'll see. And certainly that'll continue to be a thing. If Grimmer or Wright kind of have a bad day, it's like that's to be expected, right? Because everybody else had 10 of those and they're through those, and now Wright and Grimmer are kind of starting their clock. So would like to see them both continue their hot start into the weekend, so that maybe they're on an accelerated path.
Yes. We talked yesterday before the Oakland game, and you had mentioned to me that you wanted to see Tennessee hit 4 or 5 home runs. That was the level of competition that you were playing. We haven't really seen the traditional power that we've seen from a Josh Elander offense so far this season, but you felt like Wednesday, given the opponent, was a good breakout day for the offense. We did not see 4 or 5 home runs, but we did see 2. I appreciate Blaine Brown getting a home run to help me on my 25 home run counter. I'll take all I can get right now. We're wobbling. We've taken a punch, and we're struggling to get back up and get back on track. So I appreciate Blaine contributing to the cause once again. And it was a very nice swing, very nice home run. And then Ariel Antigua hits his first career home run, ran into one to send one into the porches for a 3-run shot later in the game. And it was a really nice at-bat. The at-bat was more impressive than the home run. Fouled off a lot of pitches to eventually get one to send out there to left. So I'm curious to see where the power is at once they start SEC play, because it has not been where we thought it would be to start the season, and you can still win without hitting the home runs at the rate that they have the past couple of years. It just obviously makes life harder on yourself.
It does. And perfect first matchup to kind of see where you're at. Not to get too far ahead, but Georgia is next weekend, and they have been scoring runs and scoring a lot of them and scoring in bunches and have some prettier power numbers to this point in the season. So balls to go down there. Park generally plays pretty offensive. It's deep to left, but the wind usually gusts straight out to left, like the ball flies if you hit it to left field. And then right field is a little bit shorter, and center is fairly deep there, but not like Arlington. It's not going to be 420. Or I guess 415 was in like that back center gap for the Rangers stadium, but it was 410 to center. Georgia's an offensive park, and if it's good weather, would like to see how they stack up against Georgia now that, you're both seeing SEC pitching and it's a conference game. Sometimes that can elevate teams. We saw some really good teams down the stretch last year who were just kind of meh through most of their non-conference schedule, Vanderbilt being the most notable, and even like Florida. That carried over into SEC play for them, but they eventually got it rolling. Baseball is a weird game like that. So the only thing I can say is don't judge the power numbers until probably midway through SEC play. But in terms of reaching a final number like they reached the past couple seasons or past 5 seasons, you're not on track for that. I mean, it would take a real breakout and like some just nasty days to even sniff that. But you can still be in the top half of the league and top half of the country with what you have in your lineup. It would just be a result of kind of coming into your own as the season goes along.
All right, let's talk about what lineup we want to see this weekend against Wright State. We saw quite the lineup change on Wednesday against Oakland. Jay Abernathy plays at second base because Garrett Wright is back in center. And then Manny Marin, along with Levi Clark, gets a mental day to hopefully reset. And because of that, you get Chris Newstrom at shortstop, which I did not anticipate that happening. Not that I was at all opposed to it, but just did not think that they would roll Newstrom out there. I figured they would roll Ariel Antigua back out there at shortstop if they were going to give Manny a mental day at shortstop. And then you have Trent Grinlinger behind the plate, the freshman making his first career start at catcher, with Stone Lawless not catching back-to-back days in the midweek, and then Levi having that mental day that we mentioned. Blake Grimmer slides in at first, but then Blake also plays in left field the second half of the game to get him more reps. And then everything else was the same. Henry Ford at third, Reese Chapman in right. Left field, was that Blaine? Blaine started out in left field yesterday, I believe.
Yep. And then Hankins and I also played left field.
Yes, absolutely.
Hankins came in and played first base. Grimmer moved to left.
Yes. Let's start at shortstop because that's the one that's had a couple of different guys play that position so far this season. Who would you trot out there at shortstop on Friday against Wright State?
Manny Marin.
I would as well. That was a nice swing from Ariel. Let's not get it twisted. That was a really good at bat, really good swing. Ariel needed it. Doesn't mean he should be in the starting lineup going forward.
No, we just talked about we're not making sweeping generalizations. No. He did need that, though, and he does need, if possible, an opportunity this weekend right? To see if that serves as some momentum for him offensively. But for the foreseeable future, Manny Marin is my shortstop. He's played too solid defensively, and you know what the bat was last year, so he'll come around. Like I said, still dealing with the hand. It seems like ball's just not jumping off his bat like it should with the amount of hand speed that he has. So that leads me to believe he's bothered by it, and they've kind of managed it best they can. But for this team to be at their ceiling, he needs to be the everyday shortstop, plain and simple. So that's why, until further notice, Manny is my shortstop.
I agree with you. The other big question that is what do you do with first base, catcher, left field? Because I feel like all three of those are intertwined because you have guys that can play multiple positions. Shortstop's the most important position, which is, I guess, why I led off with that position. But I think the answer there is easier than, okay, what do you do at first, left, and catcher? I would assume that they start Stone Lawless behind the plate, which I am fine with. But then what do you do in first and left? Blake Grimmer needs to be in the lineup. And the DH also will play a role in this conversation too. But they've got, 4 or 5 guys now battling it out for 3 spots between
Myatt, Grimmer,
Brown, Clark,
Levi, Stone.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess to me, if I were writing the lineup, the first question I would ask myself is, what do I want to do with Blake Grimmer?
Yeah,
Now,
it's a good place to start. Or
Blaine.
Blaine.
Yeah, but Blaine's going to be in left or DH, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess if Blaine's the DH, then maybe put Grimmer in left. The question is, do you want Levi Clark back in on Friday? Maybe that's where you start, is do you want Levi in, yes or no? Then we go from there. Because if you want Levi in, then Levi's playing first. If you don't want him in, then Grimmer's probably playing first. You could I had that thought pop into my head when I mentioned that I believe Stone will be catching, and Levi did look good behind the plate on, was that Sunday against?
Yeah, Virginia Tech.
And I think you and I had the conversation here on the podcast of where, like, hey, maybe it's a good thing for him to catch, to focus on the catching and not worry about his hitting. But I don't think we should take Stone out. Do you?
At that point, it becomes a conversation of what are you doing with Myatt? Because if Stone is in, Myatt's probably your odd man out.
I think Friday, Myatt would be my odd man out because he has not seen the ball well since the UCLA game.
Yeah.
He might need a mental day or just a day to kind of take a breath and come off the bench. I mean, the last time he did that, he had a walk-off home run. So
it's 2026 when we're calling a off day being benched for performance a mental day. Goodness gracious. A rest day. How about that? Mental day. That's
I should have said mental reset.
Those are a real thing. I don't think it's a true mental day in these particular use cases. So please don't cancel me. I think for me, I still want to see Myatt because I think offensively and power-wise, he's a part of that highest ceiling formula.
Yes.
He has not hit well the past couple of days, but he was your best hitter for the first 2 weeks. So, or in the top 3.
Behind Henry and Blaine.
Yeah. I think for me, Friday, Stone would probably be the odd man out unless you're seeing a lefty. Then it would probably be one of the lefty bats, which would probably be Myatt out of the lineup in that case. For now, that's kind of the discussion and kind of the okay. Really, it comes down to Stone and Myatt for me. Who do you want in the lineup? And then you make that decision, and that tells you what to do defensively. I think down the road, if Reese continues to struggle, and Grimmer and Myatt and Stone, all continue to play well, then it could become a conversation of Grimmer and Wright and Reese out, which I hate to say that, for Reese, but if you go back to last season and combine it with the start of this season, aside from, a nice day against Oakland and ETSU, which are midweeks, so I take those with a grain of salt. If you only include the weekends, I mean, he's like under 100. I mean, he ended last year like 1 for 35. And I know that was last year. We've got to flush that out, but it's kind of looked the same anytime the competition has elevated this year. I think he had like 7 strikeouts in Arlington. So he's not a pencil or write him in pen and forget it for me. But I also kind of think he's in the combination for the highest ceiling as well. So I don't mean to say that's what I would do right now, but it's something to monitor.
It is. And boy, am I glad that I am not in charge of making these decisions, because I'm having trouble talking through it just out loud right now between you and me.
Yeah, it's always like this at this time of year, right?
It is.
Like this time of year, you've seen enough to know you've got enough information to be dangerous, but you don't have enough to say this is how it's going to be from here on out. So you got to continue to tinker, and guys will ultimately decide for us.
Yeah, for sure. I think I would start Stone at catcher. I mean, he has been one of your better hitters to start the year. He's viewed as one of the captains or leaders on this team, and he's been pretty strong defensively. So I think I'd roll Stone out there at catcher, which would, for me, put Levi back at first. It's too early to give up on Levi Clark. Like, he's got to be in the lineup. So back in the lineup is at first base. For me, I don't know. I would avoid the DH spot for Levi because we don't need him thinking anymore about hitting. We don't need him sitting on the bench for 9 innings thinking about his 3 or 4 at bats or 5 at bats. I think that would make the situation worse. So if he's playing, I think he's got to be behind the plate or at first base. So I'd have Stone in there at catcher, which I would be surprised if he wasn't, because I know that the staff really, really likes Stone back there. And then Levi's at first. And then I think I would have Blaine / Grimmer as my left field DH combination. And then Myatt's out on Friday night, but back in there on Saturday, which I imagine there will be different lineups on Friday and Saturday. You've got to give all those guys a chance this weekend. So we'll see all those guys at some point. But I think Grimmer absolutely has to be in the lineup if he's healthy enough to do so.
Yeah, he needs the reps. He's behind on at-bats in general.
Yeah, and I really think he can be a game changer for this lineup. I think he can be a much-needed boost for this lineup. You mentioned the ball that he hit 385 off the wall in left center, his first at-bat. Josh Elander, his favorite swing was the one that he hit down the left field line when he let the ball travel and, as a left-handed hitter, stayed with it and took it down the line the way that Blake Burke always used to do so. That was what Josh Elander talked about, how if you're a lefty and can do that, then you're a pretty dangerous hitter, pretty talented hitter. So Grimmer's got to be in there in the lineup, A, because he needs the reps, B, because he elevates this lineup's ceiling. The question is, how healthy is he coming off of his first game? Do you feel like he needs to be the DH to stay off his feet a little bit more, or can you go ahead and slide him in there in left field? So I'd have Grimmer and Brown as my left field DH conversation, and then I think I'd get Myatt back in there on Saturday. And I hate not having Garrett Wright in there. I mean, because I'm putting Jay back out in center and Newey at second. So I don't like having Garrett Wright out of the lineup. I liked what he did against Oakland, even if it was 1-11 Oakland. The guy just gets on base. He's a gritty, old school baseball player that every team needs. He's going to find a way to get on base. He had 2 hit by pitches. Naturally, his first at bat as a Vol was a hit by pitch after he set the single season and career record for hit by pitches at Bowling Green. Hit 48 times in 2 years and already hit twice in one game at Tennessee. So I hate not having Garrett Wright in there, but and I hate Tyler Myatt not being in there, but somebody's got to sit. You can't play everybody, and those guys are
somebody's got to sit.
Somebody has to, and I think, as everybody can tell in the tone of my voice, I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions because I don't have the answers. Like I'm saying what I'm thinking, but I don't feel confident in it because I just don't know. These guys are just going to have to grab the bull by the horns, and somebody's going to have to run with these jobs, and eventually they will. If they don't, then we're probably going to be sitting here midway through SEC play talking about how this offense can't get going.
Still searching. Yeah. The other thought I had, and I know we both just said Manny, we're putting Manny at shortstop, and we are, but if you're like, I really need those left-handed bats in the lineup, I need my Grimmer and Blaine in the lineup, and I also need to catch Stone, and Levi's in the lineup. Well, then you could theoretically move Newstrom to short, and Manny sits, and Myatt plays second, or Jay plays second, Myatt in the left, or Reese in center, Myatt in right, something like that. If you really wanted to go, big time offense, and you got a righty on the mound, so you're trying to stack those lefties in there. I don't think they'll do that. I'm just saying, when you start thinking about it, there's a lot of combinations, especially with Wright being back. And so that's why anybody outside of really Ford and probably, at least for the foreseeable future, Jay, it's like, you're not necessarily safe there, brother, whoever you are, which is a good thing. And I think it'll elevate. I think it'll elevate everybody that Blaine or that Grimmer and Wright are kind of pushing them, and both had nice days to start. If you're a true competitor and a tough guy, but that internal competition is always a factor. I mean, we could talk about it the same way on the mound. It's like, Arvidsson wants to start, right? You've got some freshmen that it'd be nice to throw into that role and let them kind of learn on the job, knowing that, next year one of them is probably your Friday guy, or at least in the rotation. Who knows who they'll get in the portal, but just interesting conversations, all a part of this time of year.
Yeah. It's like you were saying, the sample size is kind of big enough, but it's not big enough. So it's hard to have these conversations when nobody's taking the bull by the horns and run with many jobs. I mean, Blaine Brown, Henry Ford, and Jay Abernathy are the only guys safe in the lineup, in my estimation. And Blaine, is just a matter of, okay, is he in left or is he the DH?
Yeah.
But he's going to be in the lineup every day. And they've got to get these younger guys going. They've got to get Manny Marin, Levi Clark going. I feel like Newstrom's maybe close to approaching that mainstay in the lineup, that group of three that we talked about, because of how much value he provides all over the field. It's just a matter of where you're going to play Newstrom.
I'd like to see him moved up too, by the way.
Yeah, I think I would too.
I think it's time to see him a little closer to the top, or at least in the middle.
Yeah, I think first, though, they've got to figure out who's going to be in there to move him up past in the lineup.
Yeah, no doubt.
There's a lot of different options, and I'm curious to see how they perform this weekend. What do you want to see from Tennessee this weekend, maybe outside of just, hey, the offense needs to get going? What do you think is going to be key this weekend against a Wright State team that seems to still be a formidable opponent, but maybe not as dangerous as they have been the last couple of years?
Yeah. To avoid being painfully obvious, well, we did talk about, if you told us 4-1 to start the week, we would sign on the dotted line, and we're 2-0. So win 2 of these weekend games, I consider it a successful week. I don't think you or I just wrote in stone that it was a given that we were going to go 2-0 in the midweek games. So you passed the test against ETSU. So now go find a way to win 2 games against Wright State. I think the main thing I want to see is continued strikes from the pitching staff, most notably Evan Blanco on Sunday. He's been squirrely his last 2. That's not who he is. He needs to get back on track before the Georgia game and kind of just find his release point, get in a rhythm, and put together a good outing, because he worked around the trouble great against Virginia Tech. I mean, they only gave up 1 run as a staff, but he was constantly putting himself in unnecessary pressure, especially kind of early. So fastball command for everybody is key. And then offensively, we kind of talked about it. I don't think they need to, score 20 runs or anything like that, but I would like to see a stretch where they score in like 3 innings in a row. Maybe it's 1 or 2, but they put up, multiple innings in a row of pressure. And maybe they don't even have to score, but get a guy into scoring position like 3 innings in a row, just constant pressure. That's how you wear down teams. That's where the power numbers come from, right? The power numbers come when you have long at bats that end up in a walk, and then the next guy gets a mistake and hammers it. Or you've got a starter towards the end of his line and you grind out a couple at bats, get a couple guys on base. The opposing pitching coach is trying to get 1 more out of him, and you get him, take him deep. That's kind of where the power numbers come from. Partly the reason the power numbers haven't really been there is because they haven't set themselves up for it with pressure and kind of making pitchers labor enough to where you can get those mistakes. An assist in baseball is a real thing. Okay. Typically, when there's a home run, you can look at the at-bat before it and say, we might have been able to predict that. That was a big Vitello thing. And Luke Lipsius was like one of the greatest at it. When he was in the 2-hole that year, he was notorious for like 10 pitch at-bats, 3-2 count, whatever. And then the next guy, Jake Rucker, would get up and like first pitch just absolutely smoke one. Either a double or a homer or line drive up the middle like he was known for. And Vitello would always, he would yell hockey assist or something to Luke because that's a real thing. You can't just look at the at-bat that's in front of you. You kind of look at what happened prior that may have led to that. So that's my long-winded way of saying offensive pressure is what I want to see. Continue to kind of get into your own shoes, if you will. And those young guys, would like to see one of them or all of them have a weekend with a step in the right direction.
Stating the obvious here, but I want to see Manny Marin and Levi Clark get going. I mean, we just kind of touched on it with our thoughts that we shared. I don't even know if it was a good conversation or a conversation that made sense when we were trying to talk out the lineup. I bet you, though, it did sound like the conversations that were and are ongoing in the coach's office as they stay late at night and try to figure out which lineup works the best. So I hope it made at least a little bit of sense listening to us, mostly me, blabber and jibber jabber about my thoughts that don't make sense. But yeah, I just think in order, as I've said a million times, in order for this offense to reach its full potential, Manny Marin, Levi Clark have to be part of it. And so I'd like to see those guys get going for Tennessee this weekend. And I'd like to see Tyler Myatt get back on track as well. I agree with what you said earlier, like Tennessee's highest ceiling as an offense. And so maybe you can go ahead and throw Tyler into the Levi and Manny conversation. Now, granted, Tyler has not at all struggled like the other two are. I'm not at all trying to insinuate that. But just in terms of the last few games, doesn't seem to be seen as well as he was there at the start of the year. So I'd like to see Tyler get back on track because I'd love to have him there in the lineup against Georgia when you begin SEC play next weekend. So I just really believe that if you can get Manny going, Levi going, I believe that instantly raises the vibes of this offense. I really, really do. I think we're talking about a different offense. If you've got those two guys swinging to their potential, and you pair that with Jay, you pair it with Newey, what those two guys are doing right now, Henry and Blaine leading the way, You get Grimmer back, who I think can be in that conversation with Henry and Blaine. Like all of a sudden, we're talking about 7 or 8 deep in this lineup that you really trust and really feel good about. So hopefully for Tennessee's sake, Henry, or not Henry, but Levi and Manny can get going. And then aside from that, nothing that, again, just kind of stating the obvious here, but I want to see the pitching staff continue to improve on their command. There have been too many walks, too many hit by pitches, too many free passes to start the year, and that number has started to come down, which is a great thing, and it needs to continue to do so, and now do so with consistency, because free passes will get you in a world of hurt once SEC play starts, because ETSU may not be able to take advantage of it. Oakland may not be able to take advantage of it. Georgia will in a hurry, and Georgia will embarrass you along with the other SEC teams on the schedule. So I'd like to see the pitching staff continue to hone in on their command and build some consistency. They've gotten back to where they need to be. Now can they do so consistently?
For sure. And you need your boy Levi so that he can protect your boy Blaine.
That's right.
And your boy Blaine get more pitches to hit. So I see what you're doing there. You got 25 in mind. You need Blaine to have protection so that he can get some heaters maybe when he's ahead in the count rather than breaking balls with the base open. But that's also a product of chasing a few, which we've acknowledged.
Yes. Maybe, Coach Elander should consider sliding Blaine up to the 2-hole and then having Henry hit third and Grimmer hit fourth to provide protection for Blaine in that sense.
And then you still have the left, right, left.
But you do have left to start the game behind Jay.
Yeah, but Jay's doesn't really factor into that as much because his job is to get on base, and he can get on base against lefties because he's got tools in the tool belt. Walks, bunts, singles, doubles. We've seen him hit homers. But for the sake of your run producers, you do want to avoid that matchup if you can. But they've won 3 lefties in a row. I mean, they did it last weekend, so
he's more so last night
going
too.
with. Yeah, well, that's more just personnel decision for
sure.
Oakland. Yeah, I don't think that was
You're
a
right.
factor in that game, especially when you're going to see like 9 pitchers. But for a weekend game, especially like a Friday or something, matchups are more prevalent. Yeah, doesn't have to be an absolute, but it definitely is a consideration.
No doubt about it. It'll be a busy weekend on campus. Tennessee baseball hosting Wright State beginning on Friday at 6:30. We're back to our weekend start times, Will. That excites you, or do you prefer the early season start times?
I like the prime time, like normal start times. It is nice on a Friday, though, like kind of slowing down work for the week, and you're like, oh, game's about to start already, and you don't have to wait. But it's also nice to, get your dinner and then settle in and like kind of be parked for the night to watch at that 6:30, and you get a better crowd. So
yeah,
6:30 for sure better, but the early ones do have their perks, I will admit.
And you get the games done around 7 o'clock or so, and you have the rest of your evening to do something else.
Yeah, on to the next game.
Which especially helps you if you're married.
Or have children.
Or a child on the way.
Yeah, not a factor yet, but will be before this season's over.
So Tennessee and Wright State will play at 6:30 on Friday, and then we've got a doubleheader and nearly back-to-back on Saturday. Basketball will have senior day against Vanderbilt at 2 p.m. Baseball will be at 6 o'clock. Patrick Brown will help me on the coverage there. I'll make my way over after I get done with the senior day festivities at Thompson Bowling, and we'll help Patrick cover the Saturday night game, and then Tennessee rounds out the weekend at 1 o'clock on Sunday with Wright State. So we'll have all the coverage you need at GoVols247.com over the course of the weekend. Hopefully we see Carlin Pickens back in the circle over the weekend. She's day-to-day after a scary situation when she had to leave the game with a left shoulder injury, but sounds like it's just a strain and she'll be day to day. Do you know if softball starts SEC play this week? They usually start a week before the baseball team, don't they?
Probably should. Let's see.
I've got it right
here.
Oh, you've got it right there. Who can get to it quicker?
Tennessee softball.
They do. They play LSU
at home, 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
All right, so real busy
20-0 Tennessee.
20-0 Tennessee. Hopefully Carlin can get back in the circle. If so, that'll be a really fun series. Now, I'm not going to pretend to know everything about Tennessee softball, but it does seem, just from following along on social media and watching from afar, if Carlin can't go this weekend, they've got some other girls who have pitched well this year. Sage Marseco, I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. Apologies if I said that incorrectly, but they've got other arms that can get the job done. That'll be a fun weekend. So fun weekend on campus, and we'll have coverage of it all, including Lady Vols basketball, if they make it into the weekend and pass Alabama on Thursday. But that's a totally separate conversation for a separate day that we're not going to have here on the Diamond Vols podcast. Will, I appreciate you, my man. Enjoy your weekend.
You as well, sir, as always.
For Will Heflin, I'm Ben McKee. This has been another edition of the Diamond Vols podcast on GoVols247.com.